My thing is, like I do a joke in my act, OCD, you have intrusive thoughts. So like it's like until recently I thought there was a 50-50 chance I was the Golden State Killer. Maybe I'm a serial murderer with a short memory.
It gets better 'cause it has to get better. We're all made of human.
You are listening to the Made of Human podcast. I am Sophie Hagen. I am your host for the day, for the episode, for the entire podcast, actually. I'm a Danish stand-up comedian living in London, in the UK. If this is the first time you tune in, or listen, press download and then listen, this is a podcast in which I speak to people about life. I try to find out how to do it, and if people don't know how to do life, which I'll be honest with you, quite often they don't, then we just have a chat about, well, that. So thank you for giving this podcast a chance. I will let you listen to my chat with Andy Kindler. I'm going to try not to say too much because it's so me. I don't mean that in like a fun, I do these wacky things. I mean it in like it's such a me thing to get all up in my own head about, make a big deal out of something that's not a big deal. And, but I do want to say that I absolutely love Andy Kindler, and I don't want to exaggerate. So I'll just say, in a mild, way, he might be my soulmate. And that's just all I'm going to say. I'm just going to say I think Andy Kindler's my soulmate. That's all I'm going to say. He's an amazing person. We're the same person, actually, so it's quite self-indulgent of me to declare him to be the best person in the world. But fuck it, he is. And we're the same person, and we're probably soulmates. We probably knew each other in a past life, and we'll probably know each other in the next life as well, because we're such similar people that we'll always end up knowing each other. That's all I'm going to say, and I don't want to make a big deal of it, okay? But that's just what it is. We're just absolutely just soulmates. And hey, that's just what it is, and I don't want to hear your judgment. So, do enjoy my chat with Andy Kindler, because I certainly did. First, I want to make two quick announcements, or two quick points or messages. I don't know, my head has melted. But first of all, I have started working on my brand new show, my fourth stand-up show. I remember you can buy the two last ones, the Shimmer Shatter and Dead Baby Frog. You buy them on my website for £5. That's sophiehagen.com. But my fourth show, I've started working on it now, and I love it. I love it. Not as in this is the best show in the world, but I feel such a I'm proud of it. I'm really proud of everything I've worked on so far. I love the stories, and I love telling the stories. And it's just been a while since I've worked on a show, so I'm really, really happy. And I'm doing a shit ton of work in progress shows throughout the autumn, and all the way up till Edinburgh in August next year. I'm going to be doing just a lot of them in London and all over the country. I might be doing some in Denmark at some point, and all in all, if you sign up for my newsletter on my website, you can get notified about new dates. There are already a ton of dates on my website, in London, in Islington, in a fairly new venue. Well, it's not a new venue, it's a new venue to me. It's called the Tap Room. It's a nice, tiny little intimate room. There's only about 40 seats, so get your tickets quick for that. Oh, we're gonna have some really lovely Christmas shows there. Well, not Christmas themed, but I'm gonna do a lot in December, and I'm just so excited that I can just walk around the corner from my house into the Tap Room and talk at you people for about an hour about some thoughts that I've had, and just share some trauma. And then hopefully make you laugh. That's all I want. I'm really excited. sophiehagen.com for all the information about that. Now, I need you to go and subscribe to my brand new podcast. Don't worry, Mopod isn't going anywhere. My new podcast is a live comedy podcast called Secret Dinosaur Cult. I started it a few months ago with Jodie Mitchell, a former guest. It's just a fun dinosaur-themed daddy issue queer podcast. That's what it is. We just talk about life in in a variation of ways. We talk about politics and identity and sex a lot. We talk about sex quite a lot, and we're a feminist, queer, sex positive, self-aware, self-deprecating, funny live comedy podcast. And I hope that you will love it. I love it. I love Jodie. I love talking to her about dinosaurs and all of our dads leaving. So, and it's now on iTunes. You can go and sign up on iTunes so that you will be notified when we get new episodes. And you can also find us on all of the social media. We're Secret Dino Cult on Twitter. We're Secret Dinosaur Cult on Instagram and Facebook. And we're on secretdinosaurcult.com, where you can find all the links to iTunes and Spotify and blah, 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 all of these places. And oh my God, if you already want to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, it's been about a year since I've told you to give Made of Human a 5-star rating on iTunes. I should probably start asking you to do that as well. But anyways, come and see us live in London. Come to some of our shows and experience the atmosphere that happens when we do record a Secret Dinosaur Cult episode, because it is magic and people are bringing us gifts. We're having so much fun and I love it. So become a cult member of Secret Dinosaur Cult. I can't wait for you all to hear it. But now I want you all to listen to this episode with the incredible, my soulmate, probably, Andy Kindler. To do comedy.
Where is Brugge? Where's it in Brugge?
That's
Belgium.
in Belgium.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we've all seen that film.
I love that movie.
Isn't it good?
Yeah, I love that guy. Whatever his name is. Colin
Farrell?
Yeah, he's great. He was great in that movie.
Did you ever see Phone Booth?
No, is it good?
You know what? I don't think it is.
That's not the one with Robin Williams, is it?
No.
Okay.
I remember seeing it when I was, I don't know, 16, 17 when it came out in the cinema. And I loved it because it all took place in a phone booth. The whole film is in a phone booth.
Oh, wow.
But it's like a thriller. So it's not like an artsy thing. But then it's him getting a phone call, someone saying, "I'm going to kill the people you love if you don't stay on the phone."
I think I've heard of this movie.
It was just like a
Was it
good
scary?
action film. No, it's just more exciting.
Is it still?
But I saw it recently, and it was. Well, it's hard to say. Like when you see things that once meant something, you can't really be objective about it.
Like Caddyshack. I never saw Caddyshack.
No, I never saw Caddyshack.
I finally saw it, and it's not that great.
My mom used to talk about The Exorcist. And she was like, it is the worst film in the entire world. And you can't sleep after it. And you have to sleep on the floor in the living room with the lights on. Because you can't. And then I watched it when I was 13. I was like, nah.
It did scare the life out of me. That
Yeah?
movie. Yeah.
Did you see when it came out?
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe that's the gap. Right, let's do this. So, for people who might not know who you are, do you want to give a quick little introduction?
Should I say who I am? I am Andy Kindler. Hi. What do I expect a response to that? I'm a comedian who lives in the United States, and I'm here at the Soho Theatre in London. But by the time this comes out, I'll be back home. And I don't know what else to say. I'm diminutive.
You're what?
Diminutive.
Diminutive.
5'5.5". So
what was that word?
Diminutive. Short.
Diminutive.
Diminutive.
Oh. I mean, this is as much about me learning English as it is about anything else. You're short. Okay, fair enough.
Oh, so English is your second language?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you speak better than me.
You knew a whole word more than me.
Well, that's my new thing. Is like I read the New Yorker.
Oh, yeah.
I do try and I knew that Trump was going to be horrible in 2008, so I call myself prescient.
Prescient.
Yeah, that means like you have a sense of what's going to happen in the future. But I know those words aren't used all the time, so I do feel like every time I use, it's like when someone says utilize. I utilize instead of use. There's no reason to use utilize.
Right, it's just a longer word.
It's just a longer word. So then you know they're trying to impress you. I'm not always trying to impress people, but I kind of do like when I expand my vocabulary.
Yeah.
But there's a creepy part to it.
What is it about that makes you feel good?
Because like I really like the idea of coming up with different words, of actually expanding the vocabulary on the basis of it extends what you're actually saying, because so you use the same, and it's for me it's hard because I'm sometimes I get people don't think I get tongue tied, but I do get tongue tied a lot. So, and I'm a little bit some kind of dyslexia, but not like a full-on dyslexia. But my sister and I, we both would read this word we would read this word misled and the word is misled. And we both would read it the same way. And we didn't even know what the word was. We thought it was a word that we weren't familiar with. Because if you write mislead, L-E-A-D, that's easy.
Yeah.
But if you misled somebody, it looks like misled.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God, this
And then I also
weirds out my brain.
I'll do a lot of substituting words. Like I think I'm saying a word. I can't come up with the word sometimes. Like I'll confuse artichoke and avocado, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, that sounds about right. Well,
Right.
But do you know why? Is there any part of it that's based on? I mean, for me, my issue with words and language is that I feel like I was really good at language in Denmark. It was my main language, and then here I can feel that I'm sometimes missing words or misphrasing things or using the wrong grammar, and it becomes like a soft spot, like it's a sensitive thing to not be perfect at a language. So for me, using a long word that I've just learned that gives me joy because I feel like I'm more able to be in this country. But do you have anything that makes you feel the same way about language? Was it a big thing when you were growing up, like to be clever?
Yes, and my father was very, very smart. So my father would say, like, instead of read them and weep, he'd say, peruse them and get lachrymose. And he would say things like that. I'm going to a blute, he would say, which is, I think, means to go, like, wash your face or wash up. Oh. So, and I love my dad, so I was very wanting to emulate him. And also, for a long time, I thought I would be a writer, until I realized I hate that kind of thing, writing. I like comedy, I like writing short things, but the idea of, I sit down and I say, how am I going to do this type of, it was the best at times, it was the worst at times. And then they describe everybody so complexly, and I realized I had no desire to do it. It sounds terrible to me.
Are you impatient?
Well, I have ADHD.
Right.
And I have OCD. Well, the ADHD and OCD go together a lot, I'm finding out.
Yeah?
But the ADHD I thought it was like a fake disease until I realized I really had it. It's not a fake disease. So, for example, I just forgot what you just asked me. Which
as if you were impatient. But it's the same thing you're answering.
Yes, because it took me most of my life to figure out what I didn't want to do, which is weird. But I so much thought I should do things I should do. So, like, if my manager said, hey, they want you to write a memoir. So I go, yeah, I'll try and write a memoir. But the thing is, I can't write a book proposal. I took months and months and months to write a book proposal because I'm not going to write something that's like, I will list the 50 most horrible things about shoes. It's like I'm not linear. So I think eventually I would like to write like a book, but I'd also like it to be part graphics and part other things too.
Yeah, so. To kind of, which is what's in your brain. It's just like is it like a bit of just a chaos and things that is happening?
Yeah.
Like how would you explain that? Because what's the opposite of linear? I guess is the question.
Non-linear.
Cool, great. I'll remember that word.
No, you have that. You
just
know
put
that word,
non
right?
in front of.
Oh.
What is
well,
it?
because you were talking about language, I thought you were really asking me for a second.
No, I meant when you say you're not linear.
Stream of consciousness is what or sometimes I call it stream of self-consciousness. Now I'm conscious of the fact that I said so. I sounded like I was scolding you about language because that's what I do. That's the OCD part of me. The OCD part of me is I've done something wrong. Like when I came in and saw Miranda, and then I said, "Oh my God!" And so now I'm a horrible person because I saw someone from a distance and thought it was somebody else who I've only met maybe once. I don't know if we've met. We met, right?
No, we've
never even met.
No,
so but then I feel like, so it takes me about 15, 20 minutes to get over that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I'm better than I used to be at it. But
yeah,
the OCD is like you can't stop it. I mean, you can stop it. I mean, I'm on Prozac, and that helps a lot. And I'm in therapy.
Yeah,
which I never thought. I know I joked I'm the oldest Jew to enter therapy. I entered like age 59. Well, don't say that. Say 39. So, give me a Jack Benny age.
So have you found through therapy, you don't have to say what it is because that can be very personal, but have you found the cause of the OCD?
Yeah, you can. I'll talk about anything. Because, I mean, the cause of the OCD goes back to prehistoric times. I mean, it goes back all the way to when there were people, and it's basically a reaction to fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
And so there may have been a reason for it when we had to defend ourselves, and there's no reason for it anymore. So it really is part genetics, and then I think the part of the upbringing is that, so I didn't realize until I took therapy that I really kind of, part of me hated myself. You know, I never realized that. I never suffered from depression. Like I would wake up and all day, I'm describing depression. I'd wake up and I'd be blue. I never had consistent depression, but what I didn't realize I had was consistent anxiety, panicky anxiety. Like at one point in my 20s, I had a few panic attacks. But then that went away, but in a way that wasn't so good because I didn't realize that I wasn't dealing with things. And one of the main things I wasn't dealing with, I thought whenever I just realized this. I mean, I just realized it, but I realized it recently. When I got in my 20s, I would drive, and I thought I hit somebody in the car. And now I realize the reason why they came out in my 20s was because when I was back in New York and I went to school upstate, I didn't drive at all. So it's weird now that I think, oh, no wonder why it happened when you were put into that situation. And it was back then, which was like the early 80s, they didn't really know that much, or at least I didn't know that much about OCD. And so I thought I was just kind of crazy in a way. So, and I didn't think you could get any help from it, you know? And now people are reaching out to me, comics, other people, to tell me they have it. And it's like the first time I've been able to experience that, you know, reaching out to people who are in a similar boat.
It's kind of weirdly great, isn't it, when you realize there's not a label, but it's a thing.
Yes.
And that someone else have the same thing as
yes.
well.
And it's a real thing. I'm sorry, I had another take off that sound of the tissues.
Okay.
No, not really. Because I don't know, what did I think? I think the main problem was I didn't know that you could get help. And I was really kind of down on therapy because my wife had been through therapy, and so many people I know have been through therapy, and it wasn't good. But when I found the right therapist, and it's like, oh my God, I'm going through it all, transference, the whole thing. You know, I've been here for, like, I haven't been in therapy in 10 days, and I'm jonesing.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answered anything really.
No, it does. I'm just feeling a lot of relating. I'm like, yes.
Do you have OCD?
I have OCD and I have anxiety. And literally yesterday, my therapist told me about the prehistoric, the fight and flight thing. And I was like, this is, you know, when you go, oh, the universe, there's something there.
I actually believe there is something there.
Yeah?
In the universe.
Don't you worry, we'll get to that. Don't you worry. Oh, don't you worry. Oh, definitely we'll get to that. It's just fun. Like for me, I've never really equated the anxiety with all the times I think, what if?
Yes.
And I've become aware now of how many times my brain goes, but what if the worst thing happened?
Right.
What if, I've also, I found the cause of that because I was home at my parents, at my mom's, and my friend came over with her newborn baby, and my mom met the newborn baby and everything was fine. And my friend had the baby on her chest in one of those sling things. And then my mom said, oh wow, aren't you scared that you're gonna like fall over and crush the baby?
Right.
And I was like,
oh my God.
Oh my God.
You'll never get that out of your head.
Oh my God, that's it. This is where it's from. My mom going, have you never
I didn't realize you were
considered?
saying that's from your mom.
Yeah, have you never considered that that's the worst? I would never say that, but my brain would go there all the time. Every time I go on stairs, my brain goes, but what if you fell and hurt yourself horrifically?
Right.
Something as normal as stairs. And it's not till recently I realized that that's the same thing. That is the anxiety of constantly thinking, but what if the most catastrophic thing happened?
Yes. And that's very, like, one thing I've been able to do through therapy, some of them I can defeat now with my mind as similar to I would defeat myself with my mind before. So not always, but you know, I'd be walking down the street and I go like this and I go, did that person think I was picking my nose? And did that person think I was, you know, are they good? And then my mind would go on and on and on. I'm able to stop most of those minor things now.
How?
I just totally am able to say to myself, who cares what I'm able to let go of the amount of importance I'm placing on that person at that
yes.
time, and I'm able to say, if it comes out later, Andy Kindler was scratching his ear or whatever the thing it was, I don't care, and
Yeah.
I'm really able to say I don't care.
Yeah.
And so, there's a thing called cognitive behavior therapy, but it
Yeah.
doesn't seem like something I want to do, because like a cognitive behavior therapy, you're supposed to like force yourself. If you check the door a million times, you're supposed to say, I'm not going to check the door a million times. But the reason why I check the door a million times is because I'm never in the moment at first. So I'm closing the door and I'm thinking about a million other things.
Yeah.
So the only way for me to do it is say, am I closing the door now? Yes, but it would not be to walk away and say,
Yeah.
did I close the door? Because there's a chance I might not have closed the door.
Yeah.
A lot of the OCD things that I have not gone away from Prozac. Like I'm on Prozac, but they haven't gone away from Prozac. So I don't think they ever necessarily
Yeah.
go away completely.
But maybe it is a matter of taking it to the next level of going, okay, then imagine the worst thing does
Yes.
happen. Then what? And the answer will usually always be, oh, then I'll be fine. In worst case, I fall on these stairs and I break my legs. Well, then I'll go to the hospital. I have my leg fixed and then
Right.
I'll not walk. Like, it'll be fine. Like, it's not the worst thing in the entire world.
But your thing is falling down the stairs. But my thing is, like I do a joke in my act, OCD, you have intrusive thoughts. So like it's like until recently I thought there was a 50-50 chance I was the Golden State Killer. Maybe I'm a serial murderer with a short memory span. That's insidious, because that means that it's not like, what do I do if I fall down the stairs? It's somebody is going to get me. Something is going to get me. And I won't know where it's coming from. And
Yeah.
it won't matter whether I did it or not. I'm going to be caught. And I do think some of that, if the word dovetails, right, is about how I was raised. And,
Yeah.
I love my dad passed away. My mom's still alive, but she doesn't listen to podcasts. But I really felt abandoned as a kid. And I think, like, I would go to summer camp and write letters. Don't forget to pick me up. Don't forget to pick me up. I know. It is kind of sad. So I think that made me feel unsafe. And I'm discovering things in therapy that are unbelievable. Like, I was like 10. First of all, I always say I was 6 years old. So that means I wasn't always that. So I blocked out so many things. But one time I was like 10 years old and I was at my friend's house and he's kind of a tough kid. And I was walking around and I lost him for a couple of seconds and I started crying, panicking. And then he came back and he said, "What's wrong?" I said, "Some kid tried to beat me up." And then him and his father, drove around the neighborhood looking for this kid. Now, luckily, I wouldn't have committed to it. that kid over there. When I look back at that, I look back in that with shame until I went into therapy. In other words, I look back at that and go, "You're a coward." And in fact, my therapist has had me be able to look at, because I took Taekwondo because I was so afraid of getting into a fight. But when she made me realize that I don't have to get into a fight, it was like, of course, because my Taekwondo teacher used to say, you should be proud you didn't get into the fights, because the main thing is to avoid them. But I always felt like a coward because I would see movies like Billy Jack. And I always felt like there's going to be a time you have to stand up like a man. And I never realized I had that in me, So, like, I'm glad I took Taekwondo, because if someone does attack my wife, it's like, that's the thing, too. What if my wife got attacked and I didn't defend her? And then, you see, it's all that kind of stuff. It's all that fear of, and then I won't be a man or whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
But it's such a relief to know I'm not going to fight. If you want to punch me, that's going to be your thing. I'm not going to bring any kind of confrontation to a fight, because she says it's not normal. You shouldn't be fighting as an adult. And I've never been in a fight in my life, so I've avoided it.
Yeah.
But I did think I was less of a man because of it.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that is amazing when you start to realize you think the problem is that you're short and you can't defend yourself, and that you're more scared than other men. That's not the problem. The problem is thinking that to be a man, you'd have to fight at one point.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Was there a lot of that in your childhood? A lot of be a man?
No, because my parents weren't like that, but I got that from the other kids.
Yeah.
The kids I had an older brother, so I remember in 7th grade, the kid said, your brother's he's not gonna save you from me. I'll kick your ass. So it was like things like that just completely freaked me out. And my parents were really kind of not. They didn't intrude too much. They weren't there enough emotionally. They just kind of let us do our stuff, and but they weren't. And they were panicked. Like my mom would be panicked. So I said, one time I dressed up to school, and I went I walked backwards to school. Me and my friend, we walked backwards to school, and we went backwards around the halls, and we got in trouble for it. And the dean was going to call my mother, and he said, "I'll break your hand if you touch that phone." It was like a horrible thing. So I get home, and my mother's like, "What did you do? What did you do to cause this?" That was all. She's like, "Don't cause trouble. And why did you do it? And it's your fault." It's like if you broke something expensive, my parents were antique dealers. They go, "As long as you tell us, we'll be fine." But that wasn't true, and there was no consistency. And consistency, my sister's a teacher, and she says consistency is so important, and discipline is important for young kids that we never had. I thought I just don't want to go to bed or whatever, but it was more like when you don't have it, it's not safe.
Yeah. Because then the responsibility is on you.
On you, yeah.
And how can you do that as a child? Like, I remember being so jealous of my friends when they were like, "Oh, I have to be home by 10 or my mom's going to be angry with me."
Right.
And I was like, well, my mom's she's never told me to not do drugs. She never told me not to drink. She never told me to not go out. So instead I just stayed in because I can't be in charge of myself.
Wow.
Like, I can't, how are you trusting me to know when to go home and not to drink enough? So I was just like, well, I just don't drink then. I'll just be at home watching television.
Yeah, I won't take any risks.
Yeah,
right.
When actually I would have loved to be yelled at.
Were you how many? You have brothers and sisters?
I have a younger sister and then a half older brother.
And was your dad around too?
Oh no, he left twice.
He left twice?
He left when I was born, and he came back 5 years later, made my sister, and then left again.
Oh my! Yeah. So now you have a relationship with him now, or not really?
No, not really. It's very scattered, and then I think I have I've had little glimpses of, right now I'm going to try and take contact and make this a thing, but then he can't. I think he in theory likes being a dad, but he can't do it practically.
Right. And are you close to your mom?
Yeah, I'm close to my mom. We're very close. I was because she was such a single mother, and I was the first child, and then so it was just me and her for a long period of time. And she's the same. I don't think she's not the classic mother. I don't think she has the maternal instinct, which makes her a great mother on so many ways. Like, she's given me things that, like, she was on, when it comes to school, she was always on my side. It doesn't matter. Like, even if I was the problem, I was always the problem, but she would still be like,
What do you mean you were always the problem, though?
Oh, I would just, I don't know why. I think I just didn't respect authority. I said it to her recently. I said, "I'm actually really glad that you were always on my side." And she said, "Well, I couldn't raise you respecting authority." I was like, "Well,
That's
great."
cool. Yeah, that's really good.
So she would always back me up when I would, like, I decided that it was, we shouldn't be forced to be outside in the breaks between classes. I thought that was weird. Why can't we be inside? So I did a whole thing. I tried to make all the other kids protest by doing a sit-in so that we didn't have to be outside.
So great.
I did so much of that stuff. And we would go and sit on the bench, which meant that's where you sit if you've done something bad. So I'd be like, well, they don't know that we haven't done something bad, so we can just sit there. And then we just sat there, and people just assumed the other teachers would have sent us there. So I tried to create all these mini revolutions.
How old were you when you did this?
8, 9.
Oh, wow.
But I did it all the way through up till I was 20. I tried to get teachers fired, and I tried to shut down the school I eventually went to, because it was a horrible place. I still think it was fair, but I bought the website that had a slight altercation in the spelling to the same school, so that people could just as easily go to that school's website instead of in my website. And my website was just a list of all the things that they'd done. So that when people research schools for their kids, they wouldn't go there. They could just as well go to my website.
Was this Eton? I don't know what I'm saying.
Oh, this is in Denmark, but oh yeah. Oh, do you know about Eton?
I just heard a little bit about it. It does sound scary to me.
It's the scariest thing, and there's a lot of things there where you come here and then they go, "Oh, here's the history of Eton," and you're like, "How is that a thing that's not in a movie?"
Well, we're very extremely similar, but you wouldn't know that we're similar. But I ran for vice president of my high school, and I said if I couldn't achieve something, I would quit. And I couldn't achieve, and then I quit.
Yeah.
So it was the same type of thing. I was trying to expose the corruption behind the faculty advisory board. It was just like, and to me it was, and I grew up. It was the last year we had draft cards, so I remember
what cards?
Draft cards.
Oh,
Yeah, for Vietnam.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so 74 was the last year they had draft cards. So I had a draft card, but the lottery and all that stuff was over. But I remember marching against the Vietnam War. So I really was, in a way, more child of the 60s than people who grew up then, because I kind of idealized it and I kind of romanticized it. And then I wanted to be that kind of rebel guy.
Yeah, and I think, like, you have. Do you feel like you still have that? Because you do that. You. I mean, I don't know how to phrase it, but you put yourself up against some of the.
Right.
Like your colleagues and stuff, something that you're not meant to do, like other comedians, and you speak out loud when you think something's unfair. You do the, what do you call the speech in Montreal?
The speech in Montreal, the state of the industry, where
where you kind of have to be, say the truth. So do you think you still have the rebel?
Yeah, see, the thing is that I used to, until I got into therapy, and thank God my wife stayed with me all these years, because I was really like, she would be saying, well, I feel you're drifting away, because I would get into the worst thing for OCD, if anyone's having this problem, is Twitter or any social networking where you can check to see what people are thinking of you, and then you can't get out of it. So back when I first started this speech, I had written this article. It's on my website if anyone wants to see. I wrote an article for National Lampoon called The Hack Comics Handbook, where I demonstrated how to be a hack comic. And then I started to go after, like I do jokes like, who died and made Jim Belushi a big star? Right? So I would do these jokes, but I felt also scared about doing them. I thought Adam Sandler would beat me up. I really thought these people would beat me up.
Physically beat
me up.
Were you mostly scared of the physical consequences?
Mostly, because what happened.
That's interesting.
When I was at the Improv one night many years ago, and I was doing jokes about, was supposed to go in on it was a movie called Bulletproof, and it was an Adam Sandler movie with Damon Wayans. And I was going to audition for it. So I read in the script, it says, the ugliest woman in the world walks up to Adam Sandler. And I just became enraged. I threw the script against the wall, and I was like, and Adam Sandler had kind of been a friend of mine. We were friends through mutual friends, Judd Apatow, who made all those movies. And for some reason, it just made me so enraged that I went up on the Improv that night, and I was, because Happy Gilmore had come out, and they said, he was on Conan, and he said, Conan said, you want me to set up the clip? I said, yeah, you really have to set up the Happy Gilmore clip. I'll set up the clip. Adam goes through a chicken house, and the feathers come out. He dives under water. He comes up and spits out a fish. I'll set it up. Adam Sandler wouldn't read a script unless even if you glued his face to the table. So after the show, one of his henchmen, Alan Covert, who's in the movies, I'm not afraid to say it now. Alan Covert. I'm not overtly say covert. He came up and almost punched me. I mean, it was real. How could you talk about Adam like that? What are you trying to do? And then Adam, for years, would give me the stink eye. Do you have that expression here?
Yeah, no, but I know. I don't know if it's here, but I know.
Yeah. And one time, do you remember Ken Ober? Maybe you don't. There was a show called MTV's Remote Control. It was a very popular, kind of cool show. He passed away, and there was a funeral. And Adam Sandler said, "Don't worry, I'm not going to punch you out." He said that to me.
Oh wow!
So that's
he
the way.
Must have thought it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way he was reforming his point of view about the world. So I got into this thing because I hadn't been in therapy, and I wasn't didn't know about medication or anything. Where I just lived in fear of, I needed to say these things, but there was a certain amount of self-sabotage sometimes, and then I always tried to justify it. Like, it's got to be, Leno has ruined the universe, therefore I must do a joke, and it must be right. And now I realize over the last couple of years since I've gotten help, it's like there's no black and white. My biggest problem was my family was everything was black and white. Everything was good or bad, and we're so judgmental, my family. So the same thing that makes me judgmental is the same thing that makes me really judgmental. So in a funny way, I can criticize things, but in the bad way, I go, I'm bad because I have this feeling, And so for years, I was so scared of any kind of confrontation from the speech. And sometimes I do think I engaged in self-sabotage only because I felt, here's what I feel. If I had a negative experience with you, I would never forget it. So like 3 years later, I would see you and I remember that negative experience. It was unacceptable to me as a person that I could have this negative experience and that you would get over it.
Yeah.
So like because I'm OCD, as soon as I see you, I remember it.
Yeah.
This thing, I said this thing to you. And then, so I wouldn't be able to let it go. And then also you wouldn't be able to let it go. Also, good people don't have those things. Don't get to that point. Good people know how to be appropriately angry, appropriately sad, appropriately confrontational.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's a real trip.
Because when you look at people who've been, because we know that there are so many people who've made change in the world, who've done things that have made them hated. Right? Like the most important people in the history of the world have pissed off a lot of people. But do you not consider yourself, and I know on a smaller scale, because this is still just comedy, etc., but, on a certain level also, maybe.
Right.
You know what I mean? Do you not think of that do you want to be a neutral person that no one ever hates?
No, I don't. And in fact, Bob Dylan, who's one of my heroes, he got a Grammy for something, and I forgot what it was. And there's an acceptance speech. He goes, there are going to be times in your life when everybody hates you, including your family and friends. And that's the time that really tests you, and he's so right. Look at what he had problems like anybody else, but he's like, I'm going to go electric. I'm going to play electric. He could have been if he wasn't Bob Dylan, he would have been a pro. He would have said, I'm making a lot of money with this protest music. I'm going to stick. But because he was a restless soul, it's like, even when I was a kid, I would read stuff about him and I would go, well, why wasn't he more into the anti-Vietnam stuff? He didn't want to be associated as this kind of movement or that kind of movement, because that would be like Pete Seeger. Or that would be like people who were more ideological, or whatever the word would be. So, I do understand that the going gets tough when you risk alienating people from but you're doing it because of what you believe.
Yeah.
And that's a tough one. So that's I used to do it and be scared to death. Now I think I have a more balanced view of what it is.
Yeah.
Because I had I thought I was the most self-aware person in the world, but I wasn't. It's like Ricky Gervais when he was doing The Office. The character was so self-aware. Well, not even self-aware. The show was self-aware.
Yeah.
So he knew that he was an asshole. Oh, can I say asshole?
Oh, yeah.
He knew he was an asshole in that show. That's what made it funny. Now he's turned into the person who was the person in The Office.
Yeah.
He brags online about how much money he makes. He says,
you see that account? There's a Twitter account that's been made that's called like Ricky Gervais Facts or Fans or something.
Trivia.
Yeah,
and
but
that's
it's him.
It's him.
It's him.
And you know what? Even if he'll say to you, you're lying, it's not me. I believe it is someone else.
Yeah.
It could be someone else, but it doesn't matter that it is someone else. It is him.
Yeah.
Because he'll quote that.
Yeah.
And there's nothing funny about someone telling somebody else, yeah, don't worry, I'll go sleep in my mansion while you. I mean, he, to me, is the comedic version of Trump. He must hate himself at some deep level. It's like, I've always had not a pet thing. I've always kind of been enraged about jokes about people's appearance. Like, I love Letterman, but I never liked when he would do weight jokes. I just never liked it because I feel like, okay, this is they're going to go through the last groups that everybody feels you can pick on, and it's okay. So But it's so obvious with him. Why does he hate people who are heavy? Because he was heavy, or he considered himself heavy, and he hates himself for it. He even says it on Twitter. I've gained 5 pounds because I'm a complete idiot, and I'm gonna, and then he will take a picture of himself in the bathtub to prove that because he's a man who doesn't care what he looks like, that everybody should be that way, So anyway, he's like my bête noire.
Yeah, and you believe this enough to say it, and you're not scared of him retaliating. You're not scared of getting. Oh well, how are you? Are you after where you are right now? Because you're saying these things,
right?
Which I love, and you don't have the same anxiety that he's going to punch you.
No, because what happened was I went through a dark night of the soul before I got help, and even when I gotten help, I was still doing things like I wanted to say stuff about him, but I also wanted to defeat him on Twitter. And I really got into a bad place because I really did kind of let him get the upper hand because bullies know how to get the upper hand. So he was like some guy who hated me. I blocked him and they wrote this terrible review about me. And then he posted on Facebook. And then all these people came after me, and I've muted most of them so I don't see them anymore. But it's like the biggest revelation I had in the last couple of years was when I'm doing that speech or in my act, that's the place to make these comments. Now I'm on my territory. But when you get into Twitter and you show your vulnerability and you're really, really upset and you're dragged down this hole, I really had to look at that and say, what am I doing? Because I have a podcast called Thought Spiral. It's just me and my friend J. Elvis Weinstein. It's just me and him talking, and there's no guest. And he would confront me on a lot of stuff about why are you doing this? What's the point of you doing this? And that's what my therapist says. What is the point of you when you argue with a troll or a robot? What are you getting out of it? And now I'm able to ask myself that question. I can restrain a lot of it. I feel like I'm a lot more healthy than I used to be, but I know tomorrow I can go down the same rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I feel like that's a thing that we also have in common, of just making people angry. And I get a lot of people saying the same thing of, it's just, people will say to me, you'll get further if you're just not shouty on Twitter. Or if you don't have these, some people say, too radical opinions, which it's not radical opinions, it's just that everyone should feel safe and be happy.
Right, exactly.
It's not radical, but that's the
and
same.
It makes you feel so terrible. That's the thing. Doesn't that make you feel terrible when you're on Twitter, you see all this hideousness in the world, and that's but that used to trap me.
No, you know what makes me feel terrible? And that's the same as when I was a kid trying to organize a mini revolution in the classroom. What annoys me, what has always annoyed me, are the people who know I'm right, but they still go outside to play because the teachers told them to.
Right.
That would annoy me, and it still annoys me. I'm like, so there's people who say, what they're basically saying, the essence of what they're saying is, shh. Just everything's much nicer if we don't have to talk about this or think about this. In a world where everything's perfect, that's so much nicer than if you keep pointing out all these things that are painful. But to me, that's just it comes from such a place of privilege that if you can ignore everything and not call things out, then you're part of the problem.
Absolutely. But you see, part of you is probably, we're probably the exact same person. I just have that feeling. We're so similar. It's frightening. But no, because part of you buys into, or part of me buys into that I am going to get in trouble. Part of me buys into the way my mother was like, don't bring any attention to each other. My family was like, get into traffic. Oh God, why? Someone in this car right now must pay for our decision to take the Cross Bronx Expressway to the thing. So it always was, I shouldn't have taken this route. And so if you're in that family, you should have taken that route. And so everything becomes the blame game in the wrong way.
Yeah. And I think I've been in therapy now for, 10 years at least. And I think I've reached the point of, because I don't care about the trolls. It annoys me when it's noise. The trolls it's noise. You can see you get 20 plus notifications and it's all horrific comments, and that's a lot. But what they actually say, don't care. Just don't care anymore. So I never it bothers me if they hit a nerve, but they never know when they do that because they're not clever enough to actually know what to say, the right things to say. But I cannot. I think my feeling of I'm doing the right thing is so much stronger than, like, so far none of them have been able to shake me. The only person who's been able to shake me from what I believe is my therapist as well, who have said things like, well, does it make you happy to be furious on Twitter? Or is there another way of you to fight this fight? Is it worth it, basically, to say this horrible thing on Twitter? And sometimes I'm like, yeah, it is. It's 100% worth it because I needed to say it at the time. So fuck it. And other times I'm like, right, exactly. Like I've just finished a book about being fat and about, basically an anti-capitalist kind of being fat is okay, sort of self-help, sort of memoir, sort of whatever. And my first draft was furious. It was just me like, fuck you for even ever thinking that being fat was not fuck it. Why are you reading this chapter about health, huh? Do you think it's not healthy? Fuck you. Like, everything was just angry. And my editor was saying, no, this isn't going to be.
Because it was so angry that...
I was shouting at people for reading it.
You had to go through that, I'm sure.
I had to. That's the thing. So I did a reading in the room where we're at the Phoenix Artists Club, where we are now. Just a reading of the first draft, or like parts of it. And I was sitting on the chair in front of all these people who'd come, and they were so happy to be there, and they just wanted to hear this book. And I was like, yeah, fuck you for... And I was like, oh, wait a minute. I've been talking to the wrong people. Like, there are people listening to me, and with them I don't have to be angry.
Right.
So I've been yelling at the trolls that might pick up the book, but that's not what makes me happy is saying something that I mean and believe to people who want to hear it. And that's a whole other focus. And then I could rewrite the whole book and be pleasant again.
Well, that's the thing, is that there's a book that kind of changed my life a little bit. It's called Rethinking Thin. It's by a writer called Gina Colada. I know that sounds like a funny name, like Pina Colada, but that's her name. She writes for the New York Times, and because I've had people in my family, and I know a lot of people who have been struggling with the perception of weight and what's beautiful. But the truth is, when you read this book, first of all, that she says that 70% of what you weigh is by genetics. You can't do anything about it. So they've even had identical twins who were separated and raised in completely different environments eating. They weigh the same. But more insidious than that is that before 1900, being thin was not considered attractive. It was like then there were these Gibson Girls. Have you heard of the Gibson Girls?
No.
They got very, very popular, and they were on the covers of everything. They weren't even real women. They were a drawing of a woman, and they were thin. And then that started to change the perception of how women wanted to be seen. Because I remember, it's like, to me, Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
Like, if Marilyn Monroe had come, I think she would have been Marilyn Monroe, whatever. But the whole idea that what people thought was voluptuous and what people... So it's not only is it, are you fighting against... You're fighting against a perception that is actually at the base of it garbage.
But it has to be unrealistic, because otherwise they wouldn't make money off of the idea.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you could actually achieve it, then people would achieve it, and then they would stop making money. It has to be something that's impossible. Like, diets don't work.
They don't
95% of diets just don't work, and you end up fatter than you were when you started. And that's why it can keep happening. And then they put the self-blame into it.
Right.
So it's like you can do it if only you try hard enough. So once you fail, you go, oh, I just didn't want it enough.
It's me. I can come back again.
And so that the whole thing is built on someone trying to make money. It's important to note, though, that it's never been attractive to be fat. Like, even the most voluptuous, like Marilyn Monroe wasn't fat, and people.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So I'm even making a comment that's a relativistic comment, right?
Well, I have in my book, I've interviewed Dina Amlund, who's a Danish arts historian, and she's looked through art history from forever ago till now. And all the images that people show to say, look, once it was actually attractive being fat,
right.
They're not fat. They're like size 12, 14, like tiny
right,
women.
I see. Yeah.
They're bigger than the averages now, or like the ideal is now. But fat has always been used derogatory.
Yeah.
You know, like there's all these satirical drawings of fat people that are where that's used as a joke. Like, oh, I can't pronounce this. Don Quixote. Oh, that wasn't too far. Yeah. He has a fat, disgusting helper. Like, it's always been a negative to be fat. And I think it's important to note because that shows what we're up against.
Oh, yeah. I think you're absolutely... You know, I never actually thought about it because I was thinking about it in terms of... See, I always thought... Like, my wife loved... My wife's a photographer. So she loved Twiggy when she was growing up.
Yeah.
And she loved art, photography, and everything like that. And so it's like the idea of women looking like boys or whatever, that wasn't always part of the culture. That did... What Gina Colati would say is that that image of the Gibson Girls over and over and over actually did change... what people thought were attractive. You know, it doesn't deal with what you're talking about in terms of the whole thing is so crazy because it's like, I'll give you an example. Like when people get older sometimes and they in their 70s and 80s and they gain weight, it's healthy. They live longer.
Babies are fat. Tiny babies are fat. Because you have to be fat to be a baby and to function. Like,
so beware of your grandma, whatever. She's like, oh, she's rail thin. That's not good.
Not necessarily, but it's also such an individualistic thing. Like every single person has their own reason for being fat or their own like for some people that's healthy, for some people it's not. For some either way, even if it's not healthy, it's no one's fucking business. You can be unhealthy if you want to be. That's literally no one's
right. And the other thing
it's your own thing.
It's your own thing.
Body. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you an example. Like in my family, the weight issues. My sister has type 2 diabetes, but I'm kind of like going towards type 2 diabetes. But like I'm on a couple of things. I'm on a thing called Victoza, and I'm on a thing called Metformin, because they're trying to. I'll give you something my sister said that really changed me. She said, people who crave sweets, that's almost a symptom of diabetes. In other words, when you like my manager on the East Coast, he was just I eat these buckets of candy, and so he thinks I'm a bad person who likes candy. But the actual you're mixing up a symptom with reality. So like I am trying to avoid getting certain things, right? Like my A1C, whatever we're pointing to. You know what A1C?
No.
A1C is like my glucose is normal.
Okay.
But my A1, what they call A1C, is high.
Okay.
So the doctors feel like if your A1C is high and I have high blood pressure, all these things could limit. Now, I took this Victoza. I lost 5 pounds immediately. Did I lose 5 pounds because I'm the greatest workout guy in the world? So it's all twisted. Even when you're dealing with it because you want it to be it's a health thing. It's not a judgmental thing. Also,
it's way more unhealthy. The stress of social stigma is way more unhealthy than being fat, and they have the same the perceived consequences of being fat, like diabetes and stress and heart disease. Blah 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 blah. They're the same. That's the same things that comes from stress. So you can't actually pinpoint if what you're suffering from is because you're fat or because of the stress of being an outcast from society. Well,
recently a doctor or a researcher died about a year ago, and he was the first doctor to say to stop blaming weight on people, and it was like a revolution. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, but the story is the same. Yeah,
it's a revolution. And so,
but also no. The first book about this was written in the 80s. The first anti-fat bias group, the first fat activists were in 1969.
Right.
In Central Park, 500 fat people turned up and burned diet books and just ate ice cream.
But that's when this doctor was telling people. That's
that,
when he
maybe
was
it's the
saying
same guy then.
Yeah, that's when he was saying this is ridiculous. There are reasons why this is happening, and stop blaming it on people.
Yeah.
You know, my sister was on a 900 calorie a day diet.
Oh my God!
Can you believe it?
How is that healthy? Like, how is that good?
It made her metabolism think she's starving.
Yeah, of course.
And then her metabolism slowed down. So what they haven't known about things is, could fill a museum.
Yeah, and I could talk about this forever, but I do want to talk about the spirituality thing, because that's actually that was the initial. Like I
was like, what are you going to talk about? I know you were going to talk about it.
Yeah, because I really try on this podcast to get and because this atheism being basically people's extreme religion, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like atheists being furiously militant about their atheism is something I personally really, really hate. So I'm trying to get as many religious people to speak on the podcast. I've had there's a Muslim guy called Atif Nawaz, who's a comedian as well.
I think I know him.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. He came on during Ramadan to talk about Islam, and I was like bawling my eyes out during the whole thing because it was just wonderful. So, and the way we, in inverted commas, met was because I saw you have a debate with someone on Twitter about atheism, and I was like, oh God, I'm so happy that someone's saying these things. So, anyways.
Yeah. So the thing is that this was see, I grew up, a lot of things about why you're upset about it is because of your own upbringing. So my dad was agnostic, leaning towards atheism. And I would argue with him all the time because I was a little kid. I wanted hypnosis, whatever I was believed in. But my mother, when I was 16, she became a Quaker.
What's that?
Quaker is a wonderful religion. People think it's like there's different sects of it, but they are just, George S. Fox is the person who started it, and it's like they get together in what they call, meeting for worship.
Okay.
So they meet in a room, and the one of the first Quaker meeting houses is right down here in Soho.
Really?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And they meet, and they're just quiet. There's no dogma. There's no proselytizing. And then if someone wants to say something, they say something. And they're one of the first pacifists. You know, that's really what united them all.
So there's no God. It's just.
Well, many of them are Christian based, but when I'm arguing with these people online, but the thing is, when I told my dad about these people, he was shocked because my dad would go down to the Quaker meeting house, and they loved him. You know, he wasn't as much as when you're coming out of a time period where religion has been so damaging. The throwing the baby out with the bathwater is easy to do. It's easy to see how to do. But my dad would never think of being mean to people who are spiritual.
Yeah.
So when I first encountered these people, I got so angry because I was, in a way, arguing with my father the arguments we used to have. Like, he's more intelligent than me, and so he knows. And now it's like, so for years it was a terrible thing because it would be me not realizing I was going down a rabbit hole and arguing with these people. Like, even one of the reasons why I got help was my friend said, a lot of my friends would tell my wife or tell me, Andy's out of control on Twitter. And they were right. Because like even the friend said, look, if you wanted to write about atheism and your problems with it, you know, maybe you should do a blog. And in a way he was right at that point because I was so into it. So, but when you come back from my own anger about it, I have now come to the realization that these people, some of them I don't see the difference between them and like some of the new atheists and Nazis. I mean, they certainly have very male-oriented, they claim to hate all religions, but they only hate Muslims.
Yeah.
And when this guy Richard Dawkins, he's a colonial. He's like everything you would hate about British colonialism is this guy.
Yeah.
And the reason why I hate it is because now I'm comfortable with my spirituality. Now I'm comfortable to say to atheists, you thinking that nothing happens after death? That's a nice idea. Who the hell knows?
Yeah.
You don't know, and there's no science in it. Now, why these scientists are such so many of them are atheists, I think is more an indication of them. than it is someone like Einstein, who they keep trying to say, well, he wasn't really spiritual, but he was really spiritual. He fought against the orthodoxy of religions, but his curiosity, when he says, I did not arrive at most of the things I believe from my logical brain, believe him. Because I think what these people ignore is that when you're an artist and you do, and comedy, it comes from nowhere. Or we had that moment at the beginning where we're like, wow, this just happened yesterday. The scientist, the atheist scientist goes, well, that's just a coincidence, and I'll show you how it's a coincidence. How do you know it's a coincidence? How do you know? You don't know, but you want it to be that you wanted to fit it into a box, so it's not even science. There's no science involved in atheism. It's total opinion.
And scientists are the first people to say that science isn't
Yeah.
the definite thing. Like, even
everything.
scientists knows that, like, keep talking, because I wrote about science in the book about the fatness and how, like, science is one thing, but most surveys are not objective, and you know, if anything, there's loads of doctors who end up becoming religious because they've seen what bodies can do and nothing makes sense, really.
Yeah, it didn't make sense to them. And that's the thing. It's like, I'm into this, I've always been a big pot smoker, so I would always fight with, so I'm in therapy, I'm like, you know, I think my wife doesn't like how much pot I smoke, but that's just another false belief that I had, because she maybe she saw me being, you know, like it would increase my ADHD at times. So she, you know, talk to me, I'm here. But I have all these assumptions about what I should do and what I shouldn't do. And my therapist said to me, I don't care if I couldn't care less if you smoke pot. I want to know what you think about it. So I'm into all these like CBDs and all this stuff, because it's legal now in Los Angeles. And they're finding out stuff about pot that precedes the science. In other words, it's anti-tumor effect. People knew that before the science came out. And if you were going to wait your whole life till they sign, like, I've loved coffee my whole life. Now they're saying coffee prevents Parkinson's syndrome. But if I was going to wait my whole life until the scientific, you couldn't live. That's not living. And that's not even intelligent. So when you hear these idiots like Ricky Gervais say, oh, it's going to all be solved with science, he's a moron. And he's a moron about spirituality. And the thing is like, that's the thing I was very surprised by the whole thing. Is like, I grew up influenced by the 60s. The beat poets, they were influenced by Eastern philosophy. And we took LSD and we took mushrooms. So to go from that to this white, male, hideous, cynical, you're stupid if you believe anything, is just, it's a horrible movement. It needs to stop.
Yeah. It must be I think people like Ricky Gervais they're so scared by the idea that maybe you're not in control of everything. Maybe you don't know everything. Maybe none of us know anything. I think it's the same with the diet thing. I think people love the idea that if I am thin, then I am happy and healthy, because that creates control. Because the way people talk about how fat people die all the time, that kind of insinuates that thin people never die. Like,
unbelievable.
And then
right,
if you can just believe that, then you have control of things. When actually we could all fucking die tomorrow.
Right.
You know, like no one knows anything. No one knows what's going to happen. And no one knows what's going to happen afterwards. No one knows if things could be scientifically proved to be blah, blah, blah. But there's always the argument that something bigger created the science, you know?
Yeah, that's true. And then who knows? And the thing is, like, with I got so involved in the hating people like, I mean, I really hate him. I hate Bill Maher. I mean, maybe I should get over it at one point. But these people who, under the guise of science and, I'm just criticizing your religion. I'm not saying that it's wrong. Bullshit.
Yeah.
They're doing it's exactly what happened to the Jews in Germany. Exactly. You know, there's something wrong with these Muslims, with what they look at those, like, I don't know. I didn't know anything about head coverings until I started reading about head coverings. But why? But do I really think the answer is for a white guy to go in and say, take that covering off? It's like, it's so unbelievably cruel that it's almost dangerous. I mean, it's like, I want to speak out about it, because I was warning about the Muslim ban. Well, now we're in it. We're in it. So it's like, I'm tired that I don't care that I was right. I just wanted to stop now.
Yeah.
You know, and the idea that you, like, I'll give you an example. Like, of course there are things in the Muslim. Do you know Reza Aslan?
Oh, it rings a bell. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
Well, he talks about like, of course there are things in the Muslim religion that, or the way it's interpreted, right? But like, if people go, oh, it's the Muslims in Africa, they with the thing with the
Oh yeah, the genital thing.
general thing.
Yeah.
And he says that's an African thing. So it's like
It's a culture.
It's a
more than
culture thing.
yeah.
So it's like to blame it on Islam is, and to say, well, there are people involved in Islam who are trying to reform. Of course, it's people and Jews who are trying to reform the Jewish religion.
The
It's like,
atheists have Ricky Gervais. Like we all have our bad.
yeah, we all have bad people. So the idea that they go, well, it's such a red herring or whatever the word is. Well, I'm just criticizing. No, you're not criticizing. You're employing stigmatizing, and you are dealing right into the same thing that's happening in Sweden, same thing that's happening in Italy, the same thing that's happening. And to me, it's unbelievable that these assholes like Ricky Gervais or Bill Maher, that they got popularity claiming they're kind of like, don't they come off like they're progressives in a way?
I think to some people they do.
Yeah.
To some, I think atheism for a long time, I think people have been trying to make atheism the progressive bit, like the right thing, because it kind of opposes what people think is restrictive in religions.
Yes.
But that's not.
It's
not how
so
it is anymore.
stupid.
It's not. Well, I don't know how it is in America, but
Yeah.
I know in this country, in the UK, a lot of people are just by default religious. I know a lot of people who grew up Catholic, but Denmark is mostly atheist. Like I don't know anyone. I know one guy who's religious in Denmark, and that's like his thing. Like he's a rarity.
I know that. I think I know that guy.
The Danish comedian who's religious.
Yes, because I think he was interviewed. Did he go out and interview people?
No.
I could very much mix Norway with Dane.
Oh yeah, you
Denmark,
probably do.
probably.
Yeah. No,
But,
I doubt you'd know this guy. He's a very good comedian, but I doubt he's done anything like that. But he's done shows about it and stuff. And I think in the beginning, all the other Danish comics were quite. I think they're still a bit reluctant because a lot of people are like strongly atheist. But when you think about it, that's the thing that's difficult to be. You know, there's nothing risky about coming out saying I'm an atheist, because that's
Right.
just the accepted thing. So if you come out and you claim or you say you're religious, that's where that needs courage.
That needs courage in a way. And the thing is, what most people, what I would argue, I don't try and get into arguments because most people they don't want to argue about it. Or just, like some people, I just don't believe in anything. Fine. Why do I want to change them? But most people, what they mean by atheism is not atheism. They just mean they reject
Anti-religion.
they're anti the fundamentalist religion.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is the sadness about that is if you were to let go of, yes, you're not going to go that route, but if you were open to what's happening in the universe, you would be able, it's like, where does comedy come from? Where does art come from? You can't make a painting just with a formula. And even Einstein, yes, he couldn't have come up with his theories if he wasn't trained in that field. But when he made the breakthrough, who knows what kind of meditative state he was in. And you ever hear of Alan Watts? He's like a philosopher who brought Eastern religion to explained it to America and all this kind of thing. Oh. And his thing is like, if you really got into the Roman Catholic stuff for the right reasons, the incense would get you high. All these things are ways of making you high before the politics came into it.
Yeah.
You know? So that people don't understand that. I think it's kind of sad. I mean, to me, it's kind of sad.
Yeah.
In a way. It's hard to be sad for someone like Ricky Gervais because he's such a jerk.
But you see, like, because I used to be one.
Oh, you used to be an atheist?
No, I used to be like anti-religion, and
right.
I went to school with this amazing Muslim girl, Gadir, and she was full like very, very religious. Prayed 5 times a day, had the head covering and everything, the hijab. And I would sit next to her in class. I'd be like 16, and I'd just like, well, explain this then. But I was nowhere curious. I had huge, not arguments with her, but I was aggressive. I was like, well,
right.
What about this? What about the oppression? What about, you probably hate gay people and you probably do this and this is oppressive and blah, blah. I was like the biggest dickhead. And she
How
would
old were you
always,
then?
16, 17.
Remember how we were like that?
Oh, yeah.
I was so much
no,
younger than them. I'm such older than I'm younger than that now. Yeah. Yeah.
I have no real blame for because I was just a kid. But
Yeah.
we went to a mosque in Berlin on a school trip, and I started not arguing again, but I was arguing, but he was answering gently with an imam, and I was like, oh yeah, well then prove that God's real, and he was so calm and so good,
Right.
and just kept saying wonderful things. And until I had nothing left, but I stayed for over an hour after the school trip was over, and they'd gone back to the hotel because I kept just like, oh yeah, well you can't prove it, can you? And he was like, look at the flower. Where does the flower come from? I was like, the earth. It come from the earth. And he was just like, well, I believe. Da, 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 da. And I think I had so many arguments with so many people that wasn't arguments just from my side. And eventually I just realized that everything that ever came back was just goodness and kindness and respect and love, and like every single religious person I've met have just been wonderful and kind, and they've just felt at ease with themselves. And at some point I just went, oh yeah, I don't know why I'm angry.
And now, how do you feel now?
There's something there. I don't know what.
Right.
But I think it would be. It's kind of ridiculous to assume that you know that there's nothing. What's your belief? You say spiritual, which is not the same as religious, I said.
I believe in the concept of God, and I believe that I'd like to. What is it when you rescue the word, or you
when you rescue
you know, you're like I want to save that, the word's used in a bad way, and you want to save it I want to bring it back to mean something good.
Reclaim.
Yeah, reclaim it. So,
if you have any other questions about the English language, just let me know. I'm here for it, just in case.
Well, it's like a Yahweh, and I may be wrong about some of this, but like Yahweh in the old Hebrew Bible was like, I am that I am. It's like a Popeye thing. God is not something that you it's not the definition of this guy who's outside of us. It's what you call the whole thing, and I have no problem with that word, because I grew up Jewish, and I didn't have that in the U.S., where you have that horrible right wing with the fakey religion, with the judgmental religion, and then makes you hate everything, makes you turned evil. But you're going to argue with the things that they think Jesus said. What are you going to argue? I mean, it's like, if you look at these major figures of all these religions, they all kind of were saying the same thing. I really believe that, without knowing tons of information about it. But I'm not going to, because I don't know something about something, I'm going to listen to this white guy, Sam Harris, who's just a creep, and he's telling me what he thinks. It's like the way to discover these things is like on your own, but that people do not. What's it? Empirical evidence. It's like, I once took LSD, and my friend, and this is an absolutely true story. My friend and I were so high, and we were watching a Beatles marathon, but we were so high we couldn't. And we were in this small academic theater. It was like I was in college, so it was a little theater. It's like a real small room, and they were showing hours of Beatles stuff. So my friend and I, we got really cold. So, oh my God, it's cold. We walked, just behind the screen, there was a door that was propped open. So it was freezing. So we tried to close the door, and the door comes off the hinges and falls into the lot. And we scurry back to our seats, and then it got warm. And then 5 minutes later, we went back. The door had never been opened. We both had the exact same hallucination. Now, you can say to yourself, that's nonsense. But I believe that the sum total of spiritual things that have happened to me, it's like when a mother knows when their daughter has died or something like that. They may find out 100 years from now that there were senses that we don't know about. But for me, of course, you have to be skeptical, because there's a lot of people like, I don't believe the psychic lady, whatever. It's like, I don't believe mediums who are out there, because I know that they're making money out of it.
Yeah, as soon as money comes into the picture.
As soon as money comes into it. But that doesn't mean that there's no spirituality, and there's and so that's what I kind of do believe. And when I was a young boy, and I was like, I think just 4 or 5, I thought I was going to die. My mom was downstairs and I had some kind of fever. I said, "Oh, Mom. Of course she didn't hear me. Mom. And then I said, "I'm going to die." I got a feeling of peace that came over me, pure joy and peace at that age. So I wasn't able to think it. It just happened. And these things have made me feel like everything that you're scared of, like people go, if there's a God, why are there bad things? Well, why would you think, whoever defined God as meaning, well, you think people who pray to God don't know that people die? Yeah, people die all the time. You know, you're not gonna pray, I'll pray to you one more time, God, if you promise that no one will die from it. You know, it's like, that's not what faith is about. It's not like the faith or the thinking but I know from bad drug trips, and I know from that moment when I died, that you can say it's going to be okay. There's a great book called Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment, if you ever, Thaddeus Golas. It's a really great book. And he talks about bad drug trips. Now I'm glad for the bad drug trips. I don't want them to happen again. But I kind of went through that hell where the only thing you can say is, it's going to be okay. And it's going to be okay is really my version of God. You know?
That leads, so perfectly into the last question that I always ask, which is this. So you have to imagine you're in the delivery room and you have just been born and you now are holding yourself as a baby, right? And tiny, tiny Andy is crying and crying and crying because there's lights and sounds everywhere. And he's scared because he was just in the womb where everything was safe and warm. And now everything seems scary. And you know that the next however many years you are up until this point, you know that they're going to be full of lights and sounds. But it won't be lights and sounds. It'll be other things like thinking you're going to die at the age of 5 or having all these experiences throughout your entire life. So, but you can say something to little Andy. You can't change the future, so it doesn't work. It doesn't matter to give him advice or anything, but you can maybe say something that in this very moment might make him feel less scared about the whole thing. What do you think little Andy should know? What would you tell teeny tiny baby you?
Well, first of all, I would give little Andy what I never, unfortunately, got, which was, and I hope my mother doesn't listen to this, but I never really had, like, nurture, like a soothing. I had it, but I didn't have enough of it. And when you don't have it, like my therapist said, when it's like, I almost cry every time I think of these kids that were separated from their parents at the, you want to tell me he's not Hitler? These kids will be traumatized their entire life from having been taken away. And I had a similar thing, but I wasn't taken away. It was my own sense of abandonment. And my therapist says they've done studies where, like, if your kid's crying and you don't soothe them, eventually they give up. And they don't, like a lot of these kids who are separated, they don't think their parents are ever going to come back, and they don't want their parents to come back. So I think I would more just rock me, and maybe a little anything that would be, it's going to be okay. That's what I would do.
Do you still need to be told that?
Yes. There's a great book. I can't think of her name right now. She's a great book. She wrote a book. It's called Marbles. It's about her having bipolar. Why can't I think of her name? It's her and her bipolar thing that she had. And she wrote another follow-up book to it where she gives you concrete examples of how you can do this. So, like, you kind of think of how you would talk to someone, how you would soothe somebody else. And then the more you do that, you can kind of do it for yourself. And I do really, really believe Ellen Fournay. Thank you. I remember her name, Ellen Fournay. And I think those things, which I probably would have been resistant to, it would sound too like, oh, that's not going to work. Those things are things that I want to provide for myself, and I think are things that I can provide for myself. But I think, like everybody else, it's like the PTSD of my life is that through no fault of their own, my mother and father weren't really supposed to be parents in a way, although I'm glad I'm here. And I love my parents and I love my mom as an adult. But I didn't get those things. And when you don't get those things, you have to find a way to give it to yourself, even though it sounds like a cliche.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, I have to tell you, I'm trying to tell you, when you, all during this, I'm still saying, you're talking too much. Why are you doing? I have this constant, and I've talked about this with my therapist. I have a constant running commentary. There's always me here going, why are you, would you let other people talk? She has such great things to say. Why are you going on and on and on? And so I have to be aware of that. But
you realize we both have that.
Yes.
Like, I'm thinking the exact same thing. Like, why can't you remember fucking words? Just let the man talk. We're just two very broken people.
I don't sense that at all. I go, you're so comfortable. You're so great at this. You're such an intelligent person. You're such a sensitive person. You're able... Because like a lot of people can't have conversations. And you probably realize that you are good at talking.
Oh, but a lot of people, I can't. I think it's because we're basically the same person.
Yeah, but
so
I have a little bit of I have a little bit of this in me. Let me talk more because I'm so brilliant. It's like that's to get healthy is not to say that's bad. It's just to acknowledge it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
So this was great. I really love this.
Thing is, what do you want to plug to people?
Okay, I would say I would like to plug my podcast, Thought Spiral, which is, go to Thoughts, it's like available iTunes, wherever you want to find it. And I'm really proud of it. And the thing I'm proud of is that people write us and they say they look forward to it coming out, which is, I'm sure, isn't that a great thing?
Oh, my listeners are spectacular. They do Secret Santa. They help each other more. Like, I'm not even really involved anymore. They just kind of create this they meet up at the live recordings and stuff and make friends. It's the most amazing thing.
It is. It's truly satisfying.
Yeah.
Satisfies your soul.
Yeah.
That's all I ever wanted. That's all I ever wanted. That's all I ever... I love that about podcasts, where I gotta listen to it because it gets me, especially if you have OCD. Like, I listen to even tons of true crime podcasts because they take me out of my head.
Yeah.
So if I'm shopping and grocery shopping, I just it gets me out of worrying about me.
Yeah. And you also need to know everything you need to know about the Golden State Killer just to make sure it's not you.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. Right? Soulmate. Right? Please? I don't know. I think just so you know, I don't mean soulmate as in I'm in love with Andy Kindler, or I want to have his babies, or I want to marry him. I mean, deeper than that. Because what is love and sex? It's a superficial blah blah. It's not a real thing. This is proper. This is deep stuff. Deeper than all the other stuff. This is soulmates, okay? Just saying. I'm gonna shut up now about that. But I love Andy Kindler, that's all I'm gonna say. I was so happy afterwards, after we'd had the chat, and I was like, is it weird if I tweet, I love Andy Kindler? And I thought, no, it's too weird. That's too strange. And then I thought about it again later. I was like, should I tweet I love Andy Kindler? And then I checked my Twitter, and Andy Kindler had tweeted I love Sophie Hagen. Oh my god, soulmates, right? Okay, I'm gonna shut up now. I want to say a thank you to everyone who financially supports this podcast, because it's what makes it happen. It takes a surprising amount of time and money to make it all go around. And I know we don't speak about money, but I am in awe of the people who decide to go and make the financial support. It's I'm so grateful. I'm so lucky. I am so lucky. And also, for the people who can't afford it, I never blame you. I don't blame anyone for not doing it. I totally get it. I've been broke. I'm temporarily really broke. So I totally get it. Totally, completely get it. There's no blame. I just feel immense, what's the word? Humbleness? Is that a word? Humility? let's not try speaking English here. I'm just really, really grateful that people who can afford to give some have chosen to do so. It means the world to me, because that means that this podcast can happen, and I feel like it has a positive impact on the world. Definitely on me, and definitely on the people who tweet me that it has. So it does help some people, even if those people are just me. And hopefully it does something positive to you. So thank you so much to the people who support me, both the people who give me one-off donations, which is wonderful. I get them through PayPal, I get a little email each time, I'm so happy. And then the people who support me on a monthly basis, whose names I will now read out to you and butcher completely. These are the people who go to patreon.com/mopod, and they become patrons, meaning they give a certain amount of dollars per episode, and then everything just happens naturally, automatically from then on. They don't have to lift a finger, and yet they're culprits? No, that's another word. They're helping me. Oh my god. Sarah, don't edit any of this out. This is a snapshot of my very Danish brain, and I've not spoken to anyone all day, and I'm a bit sick. So that's what's happening in my brain when I attempt to speak English. Now I'm just going to thank the people who are friends of the podcast, which are people who've given $5 or more per episode. My heroes, my friends, people whose names I will never forget, that will haunt me in my sleep forever. A huge, massive thank you to Andrea Papillon, Andy Walker, Kat Porsay, Claire McCowlin, Claire, Danny Beckett, Daniel Reifesheed, Eleanor, Emma Chan, Fiona Richardson, Hannah Keel, Harold Van Dyke, Harry Minute, Helena Thomas, Ida Søgaard Larsen, Inger Ellingsen, James Brand, Jane Mahoney, Joe C., Josefine Larsen, Katty Draxelbauer, Katie Hatfield, Katrine Engelsen, KT, Kirsten Davidson, Queen T, Lillian Harry French, Maury Fraser, Mansour Mir, Marbles Laws, Mia Rainey, Morak Fraser, Olivia Robson, Paul Swaddle, Perpetua Motion, Phil Dabbelers, Pierre Fenne, Rachel Hemsley, Rachel Furley, Rachel Phillips, Ragdoll, Robert Knowles, Robert Lee Can, Robin Kappa, Ronja, Rosemary Patricia O'Brien, Russell Hughes, Sarah Ferreira, Ikaseth, Sarah Ellett, Sheena Machette Cole, Sissel Fjeldtun, and Susie Tyler. I think that wasn't too bad. You can, of course, decide whatever name you want to put in there, if you want me to be humiliated. Thank you so much for listening to this. This has probably been one of my favorites, because I don't know if I mentioned it, but I totally met my soulmate. Like, I don't want to keep bringing it up, but I totally met my soulmate. So thank you to Andy Kindler for being my soulmate. Oh my god, I hope he's not listening. Oh my god. Well, you know what, that's fine. He'll understand. He'll understand, because he's my soulmate. Or he's the future person giving me a restraining order. But thank you to Andy Kindler for doing my podcast. Thank you to Sarah Garvey for producing it, to Linda Brinkhouse for my logo, to Bailey Leonard for my jingle, and to the Phoenix Artists Club in London for letting me record my episode and do my shows with them. And a special thank you to Peter Dunbar for always helping me out. And to the rest of you, thank you so much for listening, and I will speak to you next week. Bye!